special interest that I'd like to discuss with you the details of, because it kind of ties into this whole realm of offshoring and its security implications. So the symptoms, I guess, in this case were that a retail organization's CEO received a threat, an extortion threat saying, we need $250,000 or we're going to put out 125,000 of your customer credit card numbers out there on the internet. Well, the way this threat showed up was via snail mail or postal mail. It had a little snapshot of a database table from their backend database showing real rows from their database in there to prove that they did have unauthorized access to the backend databases. The interesting thing was the way they demanded the response is they didn't want to establish any contact with these folks. They said, go to the home page on your main website. This was a retailer, online retailer, and right at the bottom in font 2, put in a yes or a no. And all we'll do is we'll access that home page, and by looking at the yes or no, we know whether you accept our demands, and then we'll figure out a way for you to get the money across to us, or if we need to act otherwise. So it was a pretty slick operation going on here from these extorters. Before I move on to the next slide, let me pose the question out there. How many of you think the CEO said, let's just give in to their demands? Wow, okay. And the rest think that he didn't say that? All right, so it looks like most people in this room still believe in Boy Scouts. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Actually, the CEO in this case just wanted to give in. $250,000 for this giant retailer was pocket change, and said, let's just get done with this and avoid any reputational impact or embarrassment. Fortunately, General Counsel had his head on his shoulders, and he actually ordered an investigation. Through that font 2 on the home page where they had to say yes or no, they began some sort of a negotiation with these extorters, and they went back and forth negotiating for 72 hours to decide. Well, they bought the 72 hours, they brought my team in, we went in there to respond to this, and it was 3 of us for 3 days, and that's a picture of us, no sleep, no air, no food, no water, just locked up in a room looking at computer systems, trying to figure out, one, what happened, and more importantly, who it was that was extorting them, and if there was a way to stop them. Yeah. I'm sorry? Yeah, so when the initial negotiation started, then it was pretty evident that they were outside the US borders, because then they gradually started getting a little bolder. The question was, how did we get responses back from them? They started getting a little bolder, and they actually started using electronic communications, and it was very evident they were not in the US, but they were bold enough at that point because they knew that law enforcement cooperation was probably far-fetched. So that being said, like I said, it was 3 days on the trot trying to figure out what happened and who these people were. Well, we started off the analysis, following a fairly standard forensic procedure, but rather accelerated because we had only 72 hours to respond. So we kicked it off, said, okay, let's look through the web server logs, let's look through a bunch of places. The goal here being that if they got to the back-end database, there was potentially the highest vulnerability potential in my mind was SQL injection. And so we started trying to look for hints of SQL injection, looking through web server logs and such. Of course, post parameters, as you know, aren't captured in web server logs, so oftentimes, even if there's been a SQL injection attack, you really won't see it just through web server logs. And so that's when we resorted to looking at database server logs. Now, how many of you here have ever looked at database server logs or configured databases to log? Fun activity, right? Because there's not much in there. It's like an all or nothing paradigm. You either go on a Microsoft server, for example, you either go with the C2 level auditing, where if your log files fill up, then your database crashes, or you go with the paradigm of logging next to nothing, which is exactly what was happening here. So all we saw was a couple of logins and logouts from the application server's account into the database. Didn't really help our cause. Also, another suspect here was it an insider job? Did an employee from the inside actually get in to the database and shovel the information out? Well, we looked at employee email inboxes, things of that sort, anything we could do in a condensed time frame. As you can see here, we didn't really have any luck. We even ran a couple of popular web application scanners who have their boots out there to look for SQL injection, not much luck. And then finally, the last resort was we said, okay, we're going to have to start looking at the application code and try to figure out if there's any specific vulnerabilities that might have been exploited. But again, at this point, we were probably down another 13, 14 hours having spent time with all these other things. So it's kind of a time bomb ticking away there. The source code, after eliminating all the comments and the blank lines and all the fun stuff, really there was about over 100,000 lines of meaningful source code to go through. I'm sure a lot of you in this room have performed source code analysis. It's not a very fun job if you have that much in such a condensed time frame looking for something you don't even know what you're looking for. So kind of a comprehensive code review, of course, was ruled out, and what we said is we're going to just resort through some hopefully smart scripted searches through there looking for some very specific things and keep our fingers crossed. So the first thing we did is we said, well, let's just look for every occurrence of the word select through the code archive. So we ran a search. Obviously, as you can see right here, the research resulted in an overwhelming number of hits. There was a lot of raw SQL being used by these developers, and it really didn't help our cause, a whole bunch of select queries. So we said, all right, well, we'll just take it step at a time, and we'll try to narrow it down. Maybe we'll give select star a shot and see if that turns up anything interesting. So we ran a quick regular expression search, select star from, and what we found was there were just 5 hits in code. And one of the hits was rather interesting. It actually was select star from, and I've changed the name, but pseudonym for it is card table, where the customer credit card information was stored. Now, just looking at that, why would a developer ever need to access every entry in the customer credit card database? Just didn't seem right. So that's where we started honing in and figured, well, let's just look at a few lines of code above and below that and try to see what's going on. So here's just a little bit of the code that was in there. I've modified it just slightly, so to protect some confidentiality here. But for those of you who are developers in this room, can you tell me what's going on here? And I've made it pretty explicit, actually. And anyone want a backdoor? What kind of backdoor do we have here? In my mind, it's a very simple, but I thought a very slick backdoor, because if you ran it through just a regular source code scanner or a vulnerability scanner for web applications, it's not something that would pop up right away. What was going on here was this piece of code was looking for this 5th parameter in the URL. Whenever the 5th parameter existed in the URL, and actually the value in this case is when it was equal to let me in, that's not what the value was in the real code. It was this fuzzed string of characters. But just to put the point across, I call it let me in here. When this 5th parameter's value was equal to let me in, that's when you go in and perform a select star against the card table and basically take that data and shovel it back to the person requesting it. I thought that was, like I said, a very simple but a neat way of